looks like from a enrollment standpoint. And so there'll be some decisions coming up soon about that. So I want to cue the community to that. Also looking in general at our programs of choice and thinking about the equity policy that was adopted last year and how does that reflect in the programs of choice policy. So first reading tonight and more in the future. And then I know there's interest in these new elementary schools, and just so inviting the community to kind of pay attention to information nights that will be coming in February and March with more details about how to join those schools if you're interested. The second item is that we've been talking about this throughout the year is our levy replacement and the expiring levy of December 31st, 2023. And so we do have a ballot issue on February 14th. And I want to make sure our community is informed about that, whether they're supporting or not supporting that. I want to make sure that all the information is out in our community so we have an educated community that can make a decision on that on Valentine's Day. And then my last share tonight is related to the VITA experience this year. It was pretty unique because of some delays and the pandemic and lots of a series of things. RBG was not going to be ready to be opened this fall, and VITA was. And so we wanted to utilize that resource and really appreciate the board's support of trying to be creative in how to do that. And so we're not necessarily at the midpoint of the school year, but typically when you get done with winter break, people kind of think of that as the midpoint, and we're kind of turning the corner. And so I wanted to share some information with you about what's been happening at VITA. And I think we have some VITA staff in the audience and Principal Blechschmidt here as well. So if you're a VITA staff member, would you mind standing if you're here in the audience or any connection to VITA? Yeah, thank you. They took on something that's very unique. We talked about this idea. There wasn't any models out there of cycling through all of our 2nd through 5th grade students through this experience. But you as a board felt like it was important for kids to have this experience and use this asset this year. And so far we've had 21 schools that have participated in the experience at VITA. That's over 3,000 students. We're about halfway there. We've had 1,300 plus parents come to the learning experience at the end. It culminates in a project. And so that's amazing as well. And I asked Principal Blechschmidt just to share some comments about the experience to date. And so we have some top threes here. This is the favorite thing you learned about our community, and this is students' perspective. And so number one was the history of our community. And so the theme of the project is welcome to our neighborhood. And so students experience and learn a little about the community and each other through the process. So that's great to see. The second thing was the projects and the collaboration that students get to enjoy there. And then the third thing was the people, and also Chloe, the therapy dog. And so we have a picture of Chloe there looking out at students in the school. And then also some quotes that were shared from students specifically about the experience. So the way that we incorporated the teamwork, and again, Chloe gets mentioned, being able to share my project with my family. And so that's a really important component of that, is the authentic learning and really describing the learning, and having an audience like a family member there is really cool. And then I love solving a real world problem. So I just want to, again, acknowledge the VITA staff for taking on something that was really new, and there wasn't a roadmap for that. And even though it was very challenging, and I know it continues to be challenging on any given day, just think they've had 21 first days with these schools coming in with students new to the setting and new to the all the structure. And so they've done that 21 times, and they have 15 more to go, I think. So really appreciate them, and maybe we could acknowledge them one more time tonight. So and then last, certainly not least, is January is School Board Recognition Month. And I have a unique view as a superintendent, and I've been able to be a superintendent for a little bit now. And the work that school board directors do has been really, really challenging, in particular, the last several years of trying to do their best to understand the varied inputs from the community on how to navigate pandemics and other things. And I think the I'm always just humbled and inspired that they continue to try to listen the best they can and to help us make decisions as a community. And in January, we take a moment to just pause and say thank you. We can't have public schools without people that are willing to be elected as school board directors. And so however you feel about the politics of public schools or anything like that, I think it's important to acknowledge people that step up and put themselves out there for a vote of the community and then try to take on that leadership. So we appreciate our local school board here and in the other districts. And I know throughout the month, our schools are going to try to recognize, you'll see some signs on reader boards, things of that nature, but I thought it was important to pause tonight and just say thank you. So, and that's all I have from the superintendent's report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Snell. Next, we have our special recognition, which is our Employee Excellence Award. Tonight, the board will recognize its recipients of the month of January Employee Excellence Awards. Executive Director of Human Resources, Jeff Fish, will read the name of each recipient in a short blurb describing why they have been chosen to receive this award. If you are a recipient, once your blurb is read, please walk to the podium so we may present you with your plaque. Please then pause for an individual photo in front of the backdrop. At this time, the recipient may return to their seat, but please do not leave yet, as we would like to take a group photo after all the recipients have received their plaque. We will repeat this process with the other award winners until everyone's name and blurb have been read and they have received their plaque. After the final recipient is awarded, the others will be invited back for a group photo with the board president and Superintendent Jeff Snell. If you choose to leave after this group photo is taken, we ask that you exit quietly.
Thank you, Director Zavala. It's my pleasure to help recognize the January Employee Excellence Award recipients. The following employees were selected by a committee of their peers for commitment to the students and staff of Vancouver Public Schools. These recipients were among the many outstanding nominees who create a caring environment and positive workplace through their exceptional efforts. For information about each recipient or to submit a nomination, please visit the district's website. I think we have some slides for these folks as well. Teresa Arden is an EL instructional lead at Hudson's Bay High School. Hired in 2016, Teresa Arden is passionate about supporting our multilingual learners and helping everyone feel like they belong in our schools. Although she is a longtime VPS employee, she is new to Hudson's Bay and she wholeheartedly jumped into the work from the start. She is a compassionate advocate and educator, actively supporting the multilingual learners at Bay, ensuring that students do not slip through the cracks in a large high school. She also consistently supports teachers in their planning and lesson development, widely sharing her expertise with EL strategies, positively impacting all students. Her contributions are noticed and we appreciate her. Thank you, Teresa. Our next honoree is Mary Calamay. Hired in 2016, Mary is a paraeducator at Alki Middle School. Mary Calamay is a patient, caring paraeducator who shares her knowledge and experience with others. She is known for offering support during school years when COVID interrupted routine operations, bringing ideas and solutions to other teachers who attribute their success to her guidance and help. Mary is also committed to her students and demonstrates empathy, kindness, and appropriate consequences. Her students enjoy chatting and joking with her during break times, and she can make any student smile with her jokes, even if they are having a hard day. Mary goes above and beyond for our students. Thank you, Mary. Our next honorees are Ariel Goldsworth and Brian Thomas, teacher and coach and building operator and coach at Discovery Middle School. Ariel Goldsmith and Brian Thomas have created an amazing sports experience for the students at Discovery Middle School. Not only are they both talented when it comes to the sports they coach, they're also incredible leaders and role models. They encourage students to try new things and to help students to be their very best. One nominator says, "They set a standard of sportsmanship that makes me proud to be a part of Discovery Middle School." Ariel and Brian hold students accountable for working together, communicating, and supporting one another, and negativity is not tolerated. They both have huge hearts and an extraordinary passion for working with the Discovery kids. Thank you, Ariel and Brian.
You can just squeeze everybody. Thank you.
Our next honoree is Renee Sutter, behavioral interventionist at Harney Elementary School. Hired in 2012, Renee Sutter was an outstanding teacher who goes above and beyond her regular duties every day to make Harney an exceptional place for students to learn. She cares deeply about each and every student in the building. In addition to supporting students, she provides training on social emotional learning for staff members, sharing her great depth of knowledge on the topic. Renee started a kindness challenge. She coordinates the Legacy Club for 5th grade students, and she organized the school carnival for 900 students. Says one nominator, "I am privileged and honored to work with an amazing individual that gives so much to our schools, students, and community." Thank you, Renee. Our next honoree is Heather Robinson, paraeducator at Marshall Elementary School. Hired in 2017, Heather Robinson is a kind and thoughtful teacher and coworker who has a positive impact on everyone with whom she interacts. She goes above and beyond for her Marshall community, sharing positive words of encouragement. Her commitment to the students reaches beyond the classroom. She recently took responsibility for the junior coaches program, and on her own time, she mailed holiday cards to all Marshall kindergarten students. She also cares deeply about her community, sending over 1,000 cards to military and homebound people. One of her students shares, "I love her because she helps us so much." Thank you, Heather. This is your time.
If we could invite all the participants up for a group picture, we'd love to have that opportunity.
Thank you. You want the end? All right. And 1, 2, 3. You got it. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So we have another recognition this evening. We're fortunate enough to have Executive Director from the WIA, Mr. McHoffman, here this evening to talk a little about a partnership between Vancouver Public Schools and WIA, and he'll tell you a little about WIA and that partnership. And then when he's done, we're going to invite Nick Vole up to talk a little about the students and staff that made this possible. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here today on behalf of the WIA to recognize and thank the students and Nick Vole for their contributions this year at our fall football championships. They produced a production that provided the opportunity for 30,000 individuals or devices with however many individuals on each one to watch students play from around the country and around the world. And when the National Federation of High Schools started this program 9 years ago, their vision was for this to be a student-led production. And in most states around the country, it evolved into adults running a single camera and an adult announcers. And that is how we did it in this state for quite a while, until I was finally able to strong arm Nick into sitting down and having a conversation. Knowing what Vancouver has, you're very fortunate in Vancouver to have the program that Nick and the community has built here. And so we wanted to try to replicate that on a state level. And we were able to do that a little bit last winter. So we also want to thank Nick Vole, in addition to Nick, Jory Randall, Joel Burhow, and Dana Selby for their game day efforts. And also you, Dr. Snell, Jim Gray, and AJ Panter for helping with all the logistics to get the students up there. A lot of people would see the 2% on average a school district spends on extracurricular activities as an expense on the sheet. And we want to make sure people see that as an investment. And I could bore you with a lot of statistics, like 21 more days of attendance for students who participate, and an 8% higher graduation rate for students who participate, 37% less drug use, 30+% less teen pregnancies for students who participate. But stats are boring, so I'm not going to give them to you. Instead, I want to tell you a couple stories that go along with it. The first one is that not only did Nick and the team work with your students from all 4 high schools, but it also incorporated other groups. So there's a group up in Southeast Seattle, Rainier Avenue Radio, led by Tony Benton. And he really wants to get involved in larger production streaming, and he provides opportunity for students in the community who may or may not be directly connected to their schools still. And so he came along and brought some students. And when I went in to do a little podcast with him on Tuesday, the following week, he stopped me as I walked into their studio and was so thankful for being included in this. He said, we had students go up there who or go down there from Seattle and who did not know these other students. And by the time they got done, they were exchanging numbers and created this community. In addition to that, our students learned how to run this amazing equipment. Now I have to go out and find grants on how to get this equipment. And so it sparked this interest that has elevated the vision for their program because of what Nick has built here along with the school district. In addition, last year when Nick came up to the state basketball to pilot this with some students, I got a call the following Monday from a gentleman from Bates Technical College. And so now they're involved. And so we're trying to, and what Bates Technical College shared was he's having a hard time getting enough students to fill his program. So by growing it at the high school level, we'll grow his program. And so they came down and they worked one of our facilities again. So the impact of your students and Nick went far beyond just the 4 high schools here. We also fully understand that a lot of times athletics are seen as elitist and divisive. But Nick and these students have completely flipped the script. You know, the games were simply backdrops for this educational experience where they came and not only learned more skills, but demonstrated the skills and taught those skills to others. And that is not, something that we would normally think about athletics in addition to the community was built. And Nick, I don't know if you shared last year the video of the young lady who we shared with our board that she was in the Tacoma Dome and she said, look, I don't even like sports, but I was asked to come do this. So I said, why not? And she goes, this is actually really cool. So again, somebody who's not involved, but sports became that avenue because right, wrong, or indifferent that people, our communities and it's embedded in our culture. And we can take advantage of that for these educational based opportunities. So it showed that, by working together, meeting people where they're at different skill levels, they were there. And that was Nick's vision. Nick said, if you get me people there, who are willing to learn. We can teach them on the fly and grow this thing to where students are doing the student business. And it was done very well. I was able to report this out at our national meeting last week. It's the envy. We've shown some of the video clips for the level of production is much above what anybody else is doing. So on behalf of the WIA and our executive board up there, I want to thank all of you for making that happen and recognize Nick for the outstanding work. So thank you.
Hi there, I'm Nick Vole. I'm the television production supervisor for Vancouver Public Schools. I'm not going to talk too much here, but I heard my name a lot, which I appreciate. However, there are so many other people that make all this work. In the crowd, we've got Orion Ludlow, teaches video production at Skyview. He was with us on the trip, and all of the other video production teachers give the kids the skills they need to come work with us and give the kids real opportunities. And then the CTE department that works with them does such a fantastic job of supporting us, in particular Dana Selby and Mark Reith are very supportive. The folks in athletics, Dave Bennett and Susie Adams, go out of their way to make sure that we can broadcast out sports. And then AJ's team, especially the guys in the warehouse who have to deliver our equipment from site to site and let us use their trucks from time to time to make sure we have all the gear in place to broadcast to folks. If you want to watch our broadcasts, we're live tomorrow night. In fact, no, Thursday night at Fort Vancouver on Comcast channel 328 and also the district YouTube channel. And this is open to all students that are in Vancouver Public Schools. So if you know a kid who has an interest in sports or in broadcasting, this is open to everyone. Real quick, I'd like to read the names of the students who participated in this most recent trip. And I want to also say that this is not the sum total of all the people who participate in our program throughout the year. These are just the folks who went with us on this trip. There are lots more kids involved. We'll start from Fort Vancouver, Phoenix Fong. I know she's here. Phoenix, would you stand up? From Skyview High School, we have Dina Raywalt, Sam Howard, Layla McGlattery, Mike and Nance. From Columbia River High School, we've got Ethan Reyes, Derek Ruggles, Ethan Wolf, Marcus Vela, Michael Ryan. And then 3 students who were not able to be here: May McLean from Skyview, Gene Halderson from Columbia River, and Hudson Wright from Hudson's Bay High School. So I just want to thank you guys for making the trip fun for me and helping us out with this program. And I can't wait till we go back to Tacoma in March for basketball. Thank you very much.
I'd like to invite those students and staff up, and we can do a picture before Mr. Hoffman leaves as well. So we'll meet up there really quick and do a picture with the students and staff that are in attendance and Mr. Hoffman.
And then I think we can have you on that. And just get as cozy as you possibly can. All right, and 1, 2, 3. That works. Thank you guys.
And that concludes our recognition portion of the evening. If guests are needing to leave, we understand that people are busy. And so as you guys are leaving, I'll turn it back to you, Director Zavala, for the next portion of our meeting.
So next on our agenda, we have our audience participation, citizen comments. During our citizen comments is a time in our meeting where the board and the administrative staff like to hear comments from the public. If you wish to address the board and did not have an opportunity to sign in at the start of the meeting, please do so now. Because most matters require fact-finding and review, the board is not able to respond to any public comments made at this time. Additionally, the state's Open Public Meeting Act restricts deliberation on topics that have not been placed on the public notice agenda in advance. If follow-up action is necessary, the board will ask the superintendent to work with the administrative staff to consider the information and respond accordingly. As a regular business meeting of the board, we expect the audience to conduct themselves professionally and courteously. Additionally, speakers are expected to be respectful. The board asks the personnel complaints to be submitted in writing. Disruptive conduct may cause the meeting to be adjourned and all audience members to be removed. We ask that you approach the podium and state your name for the record. Please also state your affiliation with the district. You will have 3 minutes to make your comments. When you hear a chime, please conclude your remarks. If you have materials or additional comments you would like the board to review, please hand them to the staff in the back of the room. This information will be provided to the superintendent and the board. The board appreciates, listens, and cares about the broad range of perspectives in our community. We thank you for your comments. We have Heather Vian.
Hello, my name is Heather Vian. I live at 10508 Northeast 19th Avenue, Vancouver, Washington, 98686. I am a mother of 2 that go to Sarah J. Anderson Elementary School. In the past, I've been a paraeducator with the school district and no longer working for the school district, but still working with children. It saddens me to say this, that my son's school has yet to, I've been working with the teachers and the principal, and it is against Washington State Law RCW 28.230.140, the law that states that United States flag procurement, display, exercises, and national anthem. The board of directors of every school district shall cause the United States flag being in good condition to be displayed during school upon its hours near every public school plant except during inclement weather. This shall cause appropriate flag exercise to be held in each classroom at the beginning of the school day and in every school at the opening of all school assemblies, at which exercises those pupils so desiring shall recite the following salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Students not reciting the pledge shall remain in a respectful silence, and the salute to the flag or the national anthem shall be rendered immediately preceding inter-school events when feasible. For over a year and a half since we've met back in person for school and education, this has not been done daily, and I have presented it before the principal. She's presented it before the teachers. There's a few teachers who have bravely in the last week or so decided to do the Pledge of Allegiance on their own in the classrooms, and it grieves me that it's going against Washington state law. The second thing I would like to bring before the board has to do more with parental rights. I, as a parent in this community, have the right to excuse my child from human growth and development class, but I do not have that same right as a parent to excuse my child from supplemental SEL education, which does go against my religious beliefs and my family's religious beliefs. And this greatly grieves me, as I really care about our community. The other thing I would like to address the board with is deals with DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is meant to include everyone. But at Sarah J. Anderson, they decide to promote certain groups
Thank you,
over
Heather.
others. Thank you.
Next, we have Mike Delaneo.
Hello, my name is Mike Gelenio. I'm a Clark County resident. I'm just so sick of the indoctrination from these teachers in the school district. The stuff they're teaching these kids, it's just flipping ridiculous. They're talking about transgender stuff and the gay community. I mean, they're trying to indoctrinate these kids and trying to change their thinking and brainwashing them, you know. That's why I don't have my kids in the school, because of the crap that's being taught. They're homeschooled. And that's all.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we have Alan Wood.
My name's Al Wood, taxpayer, grandpa to a couple boys in the school district. I'd like to congratulate all the people who won awards tonight, for the teachers who and the students that were involved. I'm here because the second time I'd like to, and it's not easy to be here and be the person that wants to be the check and balance on some of the agendas that's been and curriculum that has been promoted in a school district. It's not easy. I just remember when I was in college and school that things like Darwin's theory was gospel truth. Nobody questioned it. That's the way it is. Wasn't until I got to college and had a couple professors say, you know, that may not be all there is to it. There's a lot of questions behind that, but the schools promoted that as gospel truth. Wow. One prof says to me, he goes, you know, if this is the way it is, and man's evolved this way, why do we not see any in-between stages in our development? Why is there no proof, phosphorus forms of in-between stages of man's development? And because of that, I started to question some of the things that were taught to me. And I now realize that it's okay to question. It's okay to be the voice of, let's not be too hasty. Let's take and make sure that the principles or the ideas that were put forward are pretty sure. It's called truth. Truth doesn't have an exception. It's always that way. So when we see some of these concepts being taught, and I'm greatly alarmed at what my grandkids are all of a sudden 10 and 6 are starting to exemplify and talk about, and it's beyond, how in the world did you ever come into this? Through the schools. They're being pushed this stuff. And to be honest with you, it's a little bit too heavy for them right now. When I recall as a young person, very young, I asked my dad about the birds and bees. Now I was probably 8 years old. His response to me is, go over and pick up that toolbox. Well, I knew it was way too heavy for me.
Thank you, Alan.
That's it. It's too heavy for you.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Your 3 minutes are over. Now we have Rick Erickson.
Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight, board members. Rick Erickson, resident, taxpayer, and grandfather. Parents should have input to the curriculum we want to see taught in our schools. It's time the school board recognizes that fact. I hope you heard that message last time I spoke here to you. Sexually explicit content, offensive language, and unsuited for any age group in our public school libraries have no place in our kids' education. Please respect that fact. Our tax dollars, including those proposed in your new tax levy on all taxpayers, can better be used to provide the basic and advanced textbooks needed for students to succeed after graduation. Our young adults should be groomed to become productive, responsible members of our community, our state, and our nation. Stick to teaching the 3 R's as a bare minimum. You know, reading, writing, arithmetic. Once the basics are caught up from what was missed the past couple of years, board members should also go along with STEM curriculum. That is, you want to see our students really excel STEM, teaching the student subjects of science, technology, engineering, and math are the tools that will allow our students to succeed in the workplaces of the future. These are things this community would like to see taught in our schools. Let's get back on track. Parents know what's best for our kids. I implore you to listen to addressing the concerns of parents and grandparents here tonight. Let's elevate our community standards to standards we can all be proud of. Please spend our tax dollars wisely and teach our children those values that teach the necessary critical thinking skills to grow into responsible adults. Now that you've heard our concerns, what will you do about it? I won't support a levy that does not meet the needs of our children and community values. I hope you will consider what I've said here tonight and take it to heart. Our parents, our children, and our futures depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. That concludes our public comment time. We appreciate everyone's time and comments. We are now going to move into our action items. First on our list is approval of minutes of December 13th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? We will move to a vote. All those in favor in approving the minutes, Director Decker,
I approve.
Director Sproul,
Approve.
Director Barrows,
Approve.
and Director Smith.
Approve.
And I also vote to approve, so the motion passes. We have items on our consent agenda, and this is a slate of items set for approval under our instructional and administrative support, and we also have items under our fiscal support services. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion or questions? I know that we have discussed most of these items in our last committee meeting. So seeing that there is no discussion, we are going to put it to a vote. So Director Decker,
Approve.
Director Sproul,
Approve.
Director Barrows,
Approve.
Director Smith. Approve. And I also approve. So the motion passes. Under our regular business, we have a couple items. A first reading to adopt revised policy for magnet programs in the 2000 series. Dr. Snell, would you like to share?
And Marilee, would you like to comment on this, or would you like me to just give it a high level? Okay, so as I mentioned earlier in the superintendent report, the board has asked us to look at policy 2265, which was previously focused on magnet programs. So there has been some revisions made to that policy for first reading tonight. No action is requested at this time. We would like to bring the policy back for consideration at the February meeting. And so if community members are interested in the first reading, it is linked here this evening. And I know that board has provided additional feedback. So it's very likely that it won't look the exact same when it comes forward in February. So.
Thank you. Now we have a recommendation to approve purchase agreement with EduPoint Synergy. Dr. Snell, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, and I pulled this up on the screen as well. This is the rationale that our technology services team is recommending. We are in the midst of a migration in the state from our current student management system and also business and HR system that it is in the next several years we'll have to transition to a new platform. It's quite an undertaking to think about the data management system for the entire state. And so the team has looked at a student information system and has a recommendation to award a contract to Synergy. The team has tried to engage stakeholders across many different users because we have staff positions that all use the system in different ways. And so they've engaged 17 different positions from 5 different departments and then had a series of scoring mechanisms to try to compare different options for your consideration. And today, the recommendation is Synergy. There's a recognition that anytime as we migrated from GroupWise to Gmail this year, that's a heavy lift on everyone because you're used to one operating system and now you're moving to a different platform. Just like if you get a new phone or a new laptop, you got to relearn everything. And so the team wants to start the process so they can continue to engage stakeholders around training and hopefully have a successful implementation with the fall 2023. So happy to answer any questions about that. I know that you were all briefed on it by the team. And so that's the consideration for tonight.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion or comments or questions?
I just want to thank Jeff, Dr. Snell, your team, and I was so impressed with the thoughtful vetting process. I think that you brought a lot of data. Change is hard, especially with technology. I was very impressed with the solution around system integration, but also family access with the translation to all the different languages. I know that that's a big emphasis for the board. So thank you for all the work. And also thank you for the 9 months of heavy lifting to come.
One thing that I was going to point out too, for those who might be listening is, I know this is a needed change. It's not something that we're just opting to do, but it's needed because Skyward is essentially going away everywhere. And so kind of looking at the different options, I really appreciated kind of the thoughtful approach and looking at all the pros and cons. And I'm really impressed by this option. And just as somebody who works in schools and uses, data management systems, I'm just hearing about all the different options. I'm excited to see how it's going to roll out and the thoughtfulness in rolling it out. Because I know, as others have said, that, change is hard and getting a large district kind of all on a new program is going to be, a big undertaking, but the thoughtfulness around it, I appreciate hearing about.
So we will move to a vote. All those in favor in approving purchase agreement with EduPoint Synergy. Director Decker,
I approve.
Director Sproul,
I approve.
Director Barros,
Approve.
and Director Smith.
Approve.
And I also approve, and so the motion passes. We are now moving into our Board of Director reports. Do any of our directors have anything they would like? Right? Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's
Yes.
okay. We have a couple of presentations tonight, so no more action required from the board, but we do have some information sessions tonight. And the first one, we've been giving an update on strategic planning really since back in the spring. And today we have some of our guests with us who are helping us partner. We have Lisa Kia Hokolole, I'm sorry, Shower, and John L. Bell, who are here today representing Point North and Espousal Strategies. And I'm going to turn it over to them. Think of this as kind of our mid-year progress report as they share both information on content and feedback that we've heard from the community and also process. And so Lisa and John L., welcome.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. I think in the past, we've just been able to see everyone over screens, and it's nice to see the community with us tonight to hear feedback and to be able to engage with you. This is the beginning of what you will start to see is a steady cadence of monthly reports relative to our strategic planning process. We launched in June, actually. VPS started that process, and we're partnering to continue to leverage that community engagement emphasis to really ensure that we are finding ways to connect with the community to seek input about the future and the vision for Vancouver Public Schools. And so this is a great time to get involved. As I mentioned, this is really kind of the first community engagement update. Engagement continues to occur, and we're really seeing additional engagement activities that will continue to ramp up. So this will be about a template for what you'll look to expect, and whether that is John L. or myself or our project manager, Katie Dye, is here with us this evening, or members of some of your advisory groups or community members that will be able to share out their experience throughout this process to help us achieve a strategic plan that we hope that you'll be as proud of as the community is as we get through this process, which is intended to be a strategic plan that moves before you with adoption this fall. So just to give you a little bit of kind of an overview of where we are and where we're headed. Tonight, John L. and I will share a little bit of some of those initial findings that we are starting to hear through that community engagement and a little bit about next steps. So with that, I think for those that are potentially watching and or have joined us, there is a one-page strategic planning engagement board update, and we are hoping to just share with you some of the highlights of that two-page front and back through a few slides. So just a few that we'll run through right now. So with that, first slide just really kind of gives you some information on some of that engagement today. And as I mentioned, the first real kind of engagement began with that thought exchange back in June of 2022, where there were over 600 participants. And from that point forward, there's just been very thoughtful and intentional engagement. And in September, there was additional engagement that has occurred, October, and then October and November. So in total, we saw about 3,152 engagement opportunities, or folks that either were part of a presentation, that engaged by participating in a survey, are participating in one of the advisory groups, or maybe got some information and were able to provide us with their input through perhaps a listening session. Janelle, do you want to share some thoughts on?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. And for those who want to track along the material that Lisa references in that back table there, as well as online, as you're unpacking the data, there were a couple of interesting things that sort of stuck out to us. One of which is in any of these engagement processes, you want to both engage folks who are traditionally sort of excited about these types of processes. And you see that, for example, referenced in our survey document, for example. But we also wanted to, at the board direction, superintendent direction, employ strategies to really engage folks who may not necessarily fill out a survey, for example. And you see that, for example, referenced in our focused listening sessions. where you do see a lot more diversity of cultural representation. So just wanted to point that out. These are really good things to unpack early in this process as we still have additional months to determine what's working, what's not working so well, and how can we do more or less of various engagement forms.
So what we're hoping to do is just to share with you the initial emerging themes. So each month, these themes are going to continue to evolve. And so what we're seeing right now is the culmination of the data that we've seen and the themes. And so there are a few themes that Janelle and I will kind of share with you and our insights around those.
Yes, so as Lisa indicated, there are essentially 3 buckets of themes. We'll reference each sort of section. There are summarized bullets, and then what you see in the italices there are comments that we heard directly from the various feedback. And so the first category is around a desire for more collaboration. And I'll just read these real quickly. What we heard was there's a great desire for greater collaboration and transparency prior to decisions being made. That students want to be asked what they want to learn, as opposed to sort of the implied. Know more about what students are learning and would like VPS to provide additional resources for their engagement efforts to make them more equitable. And just a couple of comments. The one that really stuck out to me is the second bullet, which is someone indicated, listen to students, listen to parents, and listen to teachers. And so there was sort of an overarching theme, I think, across all of the engagement, this notion of active listening, intentional listening. Next slide, please. This next area is around focusing on equity and equitable outcomes. A lot of commentary we heard that folks were happy to see VPS respond to the growing diversity in the community. And as we've referenced, I think in our last presentation to the board, Southwest Washington and VPS in particular has experienced significant increase in cultural as well as ethnic diversity. So a lot of folks really happy to see the VPS sort of lean in that area. That folks were curious about closing perceived barriers and educational gaps between students. The whole notion of what is the achievement gap and how do we really close that? The diverse needs of students and families require diversity in approach and strategy, and that more partnerships with community-based organizations and advocates representing diverse communities, that those were needed. And that core values ought to be reflected in the strategic plan, such as diversity, equity, kindness, inclusion, support, acceptance, respect, and empathy. And just again, a couple of notes to call out here. One person noted a focus on inclusion, acceptance, and kindness towards all people. Someone indicated achievement for all students working as a community. And the last I'll share is diversity of opinion and background, inclusion of ideas and thoughts into the plan. Really wanting to see that in the plan.
The third theme that we started to see emerging was an emphasis on belonging and relationships. And there were comments relative to the idea of community building and how that fosters a greater sense of belonging and students, and then therefore their success. I think we're seeing as a result, certainly of the impacts of the pandemic, more emphasis on what it means to show up and be ready with that emotional and mental support. And so we saw that as an emerging theme in some of the feedback. Having more adults volunteering, leading, or presenting and representing and reflecting the diversity of communities in the VPS community was important. And then characteristics for student success. So this was also something that I think really resonated with our team, but words like critical thinking, empathy, compassion, confidence, perseverance, conflict resolution skills, effective communication, collaboration, and adaptability. So that's the kind of comments that we're seeing kind of come through, that feedback that we've already started to collect. We're hoping that we'll have more folks that'll engage in not only taking the survey, but participating in our engagement efforts. One of the quotes in this particular theme that I thought was really important to share was just the one at the very top. We genuinely care about each and every student, staff, and parent that we represent, which really came through a lot of that feedback that we received. So those are the initial kind of 3 emerging themes. There's a lot of feedback. And so it's difficult to take all of that feedback and just really say, these are, the only themes. There's a lot of really valuable insight. We felt like this is helping us to move towards how we'll start to organize that strategic plan as a guide for a path forward, which kind of leads us into the next slide, which is our upcoming engagement and different ways in which we're hoping the greater community, the VPS community, and members of the board will be able to help us. This is a bit of a call to action. We believe there's a lot more work yet to be done over the next few months to ensure that we're engaging the community and gathering their input to help us inform how this plan will evolve. There are 6 advisory groups, which is pretty phenomenal. Those advisory groups are either active or going to be activated within the next month. One of those key groups is the Strategic Planning Steering Group, which will be facilitated by a couple of our cabinet leaders. We're pretty excited about that. It will be an opportunity to pull some of those other members of the advisory groups that have been standing. So community advisory groups and staff and student, faculty, a family group. So all these different voices that have perhaps existing spaces where they can share their input. They'll be bringing those voices together in addition to potentially adding a few other voices to help as a strategic steering group to lead this process and to be able to take some of the community engagement feedback, process it, and bring back some recommendations. So that committee will start in January. And then we have a thought leadership event that will be hosted later this month. We'll be bringing in, we've invited over 300 community leaders to be part of shaping the vision for VPS. And then again, as Janelle mentioned, we found great success in not only just providing opportunities where folks can come to us and provide input, but also trying to be where others are. So that's through ongoing community and stakeholder group presentation and engagements, and then these listening sessions that have been hosted in partnership with VPS. So there's a lot still planned, a lot of opportunities to engage and to get involved and to share thoughts about the future for VPS, and then to bring that back to the board and start working through what that plan will look like in terms of the framework, the pieces of the plan, and then how that gets operationalized with Dr. Snell and the cabinet leadership. So with that, Janelle, other
I think
comments?
just the final note is it's a great opportunity for both the public as well as the board to really lean in. This process will only be as effective as the engagement that we are able to get. And so really needing to hear from you what's sort of working as you're having conversations with your constituents and areas where we can frankly improve upon. We still have time.
We'd be happy to take questions, comments, or thoughts based on what we've already kind of shared with you so far.
I just want to thank you. This was great, a great check-in. I think we've been hearing about this, but we haven't connected with your team in a few months. So it's kind of nice to see all the work, and I'm excited for all the work this month. It looks like there's a lot on the agenda. I always will have questions, so I might funnel them through Dr. Snell as I reflect.
Not at this point, but if you have questions, because of the nature of a public meeting, you're welcome to engage and share with me either directly or using some of the survey. We would welcome that. One of the questions that I've heard in the discussions with board directors is okay, so we've got a lot of input and often we hear things like transparency and more engagement and like, how do we translate that into an action plan? Like, can you describe a little about the process for that?
Softball for Lisa. you know.
We're excited about that question, Dr. Snell. Janelle and Katie and I just wrapped up a planning process with a school district in Oregon where we had a little bit of the how do we ensure that community members' voices are really reflected in the plan. So can they see where their feedback made it into the final result? Because what we find very challenging is asking the community to share with us their feedback. And we say, thank you. And then they don't know where their feedback makes it into a plan, right? And that's hard to then engage community members again and again to share their feedback. And so what we are hoping and what we are planning is that by the time we complete this, that you will have folks that will be able to come to this meeting and be able to say, my feedback was heard and it was integrated into the plan in this way. And here I can show you where it was integrated. And that's the result that we had in October when that board adopted the strategic plan. There's a lot of work from here to there. So we want to make sure that we're taking all of that good input and then we're working with those community advisory groups to take the input to look at what's missing, to be able to start to work with the cabinet and leadership to understand how it's operationalized, so how it's going to really show up, and then be able to look at how do we prioritize that, which is the work of Dr. Snell and this group, because you can't say yes to everything all at once. And so all of that is part of this process, but we really want to ensure there's alignment around those framework, that most important focus areas, and then how that framework works into the operational plans. Probably other.
I think that captures it well. I mean, I think the other piece is it's going to be critical for the board to ensure that we are reflecting what we're hearing in the community throughout the course of this process, because it's a continuous loop process. We seek information from the community. We synthesize that material, we report out. We need to ensure that, did we hear you correctly? Is this right track, wrong track? And so that will be a cornerstone throughout the whole process, is to ensure that there's that continuous loop.
I think it's also important to share that not all community members feel safe in every space to be able to share, which is why the community engagement is designed to be multiple ways of engaging, not just one way of engaging. And so that iterative process that Janelle mentions is why we're so focused on making sure that we're bringing back updates monthly and checking. Does this seem like this is what you're hearing and what you're seeing? And hopefully we will continue to have those voices feeling comfortable to continue to share their input.
One follow-up on that. Will there be, you said you'll be bringing it back to the community advisory groups. Will you be specifically bringing back like the preliminary draft and going through a drafting process in those engagement groups?
Yes. Actually, I'd love to tell you a little bit more if we have a little bit of time to kind of walk through a bit of the thinking that we've had with the strategic steering group in particular. Is that kind of that first meeting is a bit about onboarding, and then we'll be able to share a bit about what we're hearing in the community engagement, and then where there's gaps and how that group can help us fill those gaps. And then during that period of time, we're hoping to be able to start to look at what does that end product look like with this group. And so Dr. Snell has access to lots of different strategic planning documents where it's important for us to look at what resonates, what works well, what doesn't work well, and start to narrow down those examples as we think about and envision what VPS's plan will look, feel, and sound like. And then that plan, that framework will start to show to that strategic planning group as they start to narrow in on how do we take that community engagement feedback and start to imagine how it'll fit within this framework. We don't expect anyone to be strategic planning experts. We want to make sure that they have the right access to information and they're helping to do what they do well, which is engage the community and then provide their perspective based on their experience with VPS, with our community, be able to share that and then bring it back to this group. So that's a bit of the cadence. So they'll be able to engage in seeing some of those draft community engagement reports, provide input, help us with the framework, help us with some of the draft plan. And then the idea would be that strategic steering group would see the draft plan, be able to provide input before that final plan makes it before this board for adoption.
Thank you.
There aren't any further questions at this time. We appreciate you taking the time to be present with us today and to share information, and we look forward to opportunities in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our second presentation tonight is an ongoing presentation. One of the board goal areas is around obviously student learning, and we look at that from different lenses. And one of those is through the curriculum that we adopt and the processes for that. The reason tonight we have this update is that we will be starting the budget cycle. And part of the budget cycle is to have a curriculum adoption cycle as well. Obviously, resources need to be invested to purchase new curriculum. And so I've invited some guests tonight to talk a little about the process and answer any questions that the board might have. And so I'm going to reshare my screen and invite Darcy Frank and Christine Lindholm forward. Oops. So as I mentioned, preparing for the 23-24 budget is obviously critical, and this cycle starts typically in January, and our legislature just kicked off, and that's a part of the cycle as well. But it's not just for this current budget year, it's also thinking beyond and how do you plan for adoptions. Adoptions take a lot of resources from a financial standpoint, but also from a time standpoint to train staff about what the new curriculum is and the tools. And in particular, adoptions, over the last 10 to 15 years have included a technology component of it, which is also a training piece. Our last major adoption was a K-2 foundational reading adoption in 2019. And as a board, you can expect to see a draft of a 4 to 7 year curriculum adoption cycle that would prioritize out of date kind of timeliness of curriculum to kind of keep us on schedule so that our students consistently have materials that are engaging in front of them, relevant, and do the standards that we heard referenced earlier this evening. So the reason there's a 4 to 7 year window on that sometimes is that because of budget impacts or things of that nature, sometimes it's delayed a year or moved up a year in certain situations. So I will drive the slides again and turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, directors and Dr. Snell. Thanks for having us. I'm Christy Lindholm. I'm an executive director in schools and learning, and we're excited tonight to talk about the work that we're doing. I'm going to kick it off and then turn it over to Darcy. I'm really pleased to work alongside Darcy and her team. They've done a lot of work to make sure that resources are available for students and for teachers. So the first thing we have up here is a screenshot of what you would see if you went to the VPS website, if you were a parent or community member and you wanted to see what we teach, what are the materials, what do the scope and sequences look like, kind of what is your kid learning and what grade level. This is where you go. You could click on any of those links. If you had a hard time navigating around the site, you could always talk to someone at your school. You can also talk to like a teacher or a principal, but you can also call curriculum and instruction and ask to see either to get better directions on the site or to see the curriculum. The next slide is a resource that we have for our teachers. It's the Curriculum and Instruction Hub, and it's basically all things teaching and learning. And this is for educators to go on. It's by grade level, it's by content, it's arranged around our instructional standards. And so teachers have this huge resource, it's pretty big, to be able to find, to collaborate together and also to figure out what to teach. Darcy's going to talk more about what we do when we need to find our new curriculum, what that process looks like, and how we're setting it up for future. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Snell, board members and community guests. I'm Darcy Frank. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction and Assessment, so CIA Director for VPS. So thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of information. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to go over, first of all, what we mean by core curriculum and supplemental materials. Sometimes there's some confusion. So the core curriculum actually goes through an adoption process, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And that adoption process then results in a curriculum resource that is kind of the #1 resource in a content area. And that's what is available in all classrooms that the district provides, and we provide PD around the use of those materials. Supplemental core materials are actually materials that will support the core resources that the district provides, and we can provide professional development around, but that is, again, a supplement so that you would use in addition to. We have, and that goes through an approval process, not an adoption process. So the supplemental materials go through the Instructional Materials Committee approval process. And then we have some temporary supplementals that teachers can use for a year. They can determine through some criterion that it is really a good resource for students, that it supports the standards, that it's research-based, and that it is increasing student learning. And if that is the case, they can come to us in the Instructional Materials Committee, and we'll go through that approval process, and then they can continue using those resources. All right. So the adoption process actually is a pretty rigorous process. So what we will do is we will initially open up a request for recommendations. So if we were going to do a math adoption, say, we would ask for input around what are some resources you would like us to consider as part of an adoption process. We would narrow that down to 3 options, and we would go through what we call a pilot process. So we would have 1 or 2 buildings using one resource, 1 or 2 using another, 1 or 2 using another, and then we would go through a very rigorous rubric process with the teachers in those buildings to talk about how these resources are supporting our standards and our goals and are supporting student learning. We'd look at data with the help of the data team and determine which of those resources best meets the learning needs of our students. So then once that adoption committee makes a recommendation, that goes to the Instructional Materials Committee. We would make a recommendation to the board, and the board would hopefully approve that recommendation. So it is a pretty rigorous approach, as opposed to those supplemental materials that just go through that recommendation process. Okay, and the adoption committee, we just kind of wanted to go over again the rigor of that. Some of the considerations would include research-based effectiveness, the academic standards. Does it provide some differentiation? So supports for students who need extra help, supports for students who need those extension activities. The critical analysis and informed decision-making skills. So we want our students to have that thinking process, to be those strong thinkers to support their success, college and career readiness. We need equitable access, high quality materials, and it goes through a rigorous bias process to determine that we are actually being able to meet the needs of all of our students, and that all of our students can see themselves in the resources that we provide. And then at the conclusion of the process, again, we would make a recommendation, it would go to the board, and the approval process happens. So currently, as Jeff mentioned, we are working on an adoption process and a cycle, so that we're going through on a regular basis to determine what materials are needed, what content areas need some attention, and then going through and looking at our resources and the need for updating those resources on a regular basis.
Any wrap up? I didn't want to step on, as you were approaching the podium, I didn't want to.
I was getting my computer, but we would be happy to answer any questions you
Yeah,
might have.
thank you. Any questions from the board? Thank you both for sharing, and we will have that draft adoption cycle as a part of the budget approval process for your review and input. So looking ahead to that.
Thank you, everyone. These were great presentations. We are now moving into our board of director reports. Do any of our directors have anything they would like to report to our community? No? That's the end of our meeting. Thank you, everyone. We are not going to recess into an executive session. The subject is personnel to discuss the performance of a public employee. No action to follow. When we return, we will just be adjourning the meeting and we won't have any action items. We anticipate this will take about an hour and a half. Thank you. We're going to do it. Mhm.
Thank you. So, email them directly?
Email me on dates, and then what I'll do is, and if you're wanting to look at certain schools or with a certain